Robin Williams looks 40, but he's actually 10 years old in Jack.
David Bowie and Dennis Hopper promote the meteoric rise of the artist Basquiat.
And after the big earthquake, Kurt Russell surfs down Wilshire Boulevard in Escape from L.A.
We've seen how people react. We've been through this before. I just don't want Jack. I have to face that.
Robin Williams has a strange medical problem in Jack. He's growing at 4 times the normal rate, and so at the age of 10, he looks like a man of 40. And his parents wonder if he can go to regular school. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Robin Williams has had a lot of success over the years in playing grown-up kids and other kinds of misfits, but here I think he finally runs out of luck. Jack is a movie that never seems to have really thought about what it would be like to be 10 years old and in a grown-up body. Instead, it just takes that premise and throws sitcom ideas at it. Look at this scene. One of Jack's schoolmates has talked him into impersonating the principal. Well, that's a passable comedy idea, but the way it's handled here is all wrong. This isn't a 10-year-old talking. It's Robin Williams doing one of his characters.
So tell me, what happened to Principal McGee? I just talked to him on the phone.
I don't know what happened to Mr. McGee. Mr. Powell?
He got diarrhea.
Diarrhea?
Yeah, he got diarrhea. And he spewed. Threw up. Yeah, he had the squirts. He had diarrhea.
Oh, boy, that's more than I needed to know.
And that's Fran Drescher from TV's The Nanny. Jack becomes popular with his classmates because he's big enough to buy Penthouse magazine.
And they don't give you no trouble in buying one? I mean, like, they don't ask for ID?
No, I just don't shave for a day, and I look like 50.
Only a few scenes in the movie feel like they involve a real 10-year-old inside that big adult body, and most of those scenes also involve Jennifer Lopez as his 5th grade teacher.
Oh, what kind of foods do you just hate?
Broccoli.
Broccoli.
Makes you fart.
Anybody else here hate broccoli? Hands? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, it looks like you've got more in common than you think.
Jack could have been one of two things. It could have been funny or it could have been believable. For me, it was neither one. And I don't know who it was made for. Either kids are going to feel uncomfortable, I think, with the growing-up stuff, and adults won't like the slapstick and juvenile stuff. It's kind of amazing to note that Jack was directed by the great Francis Ford Coppola, who was too talented to be grinding out stuff like this.
Well, that to me is the biggest surprise of all. When I saw Coppola's name on it, as the credits began, I was kind of excited. Then I was shocked because, Roger, I can't point to a single scene in this movie and say, that's a Coppola shot. Forget about the awful screenplay that's involved with. Now, it's well known that Francis Coppola just bought additional acreage for his vineyard, and he's producing wonderful wine there. Niebaum Coppola. I like the '84 vintage.
Okay,
but I also have very good taste, Roger, and Jack stinks. It is really bad, and for all the reasons that you mentioned, Robin Williams is just doing his shtick, and to go into the bathos of whether Jack will survive or perish is really sickening at that point. I think it's a very bad movie.
I wonder if maybe he was thinking of the success of Peggy Sue Got Married, which is about an older woman who goes back and inhabits her teenage body, and he maybe thought he could repeat that formula. But Peggy Sue had a lot of truth in it.
Oh, my gosh.
It was about real life. It was about real feelings. This movie
And it was
is
adult.
Just,
it was adult and
this
adult.
movie is contrived from one end to the other. It's a real disappointment.
Tremendous disappointment. Okay, next movie, and it too stars Robin Williams, but in a better role than Jack. Couldn't be worse. It's a familiar role for Williams, the genie in the latest Disney Aladdin sequel, Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Another straight-to-home video picture, but I think this one could have worked in theaters, and Robin Williams is the reason. He's absolutely arresting every time his character and voice appear on screen, as in the terrific opening number in celebration of the wedding of Aladdin and Jasmine.
There's a party here in Agrabah. There's excitement in the air. People pouring in from near and far. Because Jasmine and Aladdin are gonna have a wedding. There's a party here in Agrabah. Everybody will be there. So if you're a pauper or a shaw, do something with your hair.
Even more entertaining is when the genie is the wedding coordinator, and he's even funnier, I think, than Martin Short's wedding arranger and father of the bride.
That's right, we're taking you to the marriage of the millennium. And who's this coming on the lovely stretch camel? Oh, it's Cleopatra and Caesar, and they're bringing a salad. How wonderful. Oh, look, there's Osiris. Oh, Osiris! Osiris, can we have a word with you? Ah! Oh, no, the crowd is parting. Who's coming? It's Moses!
Of course, the wedding doesn't go off without a hitch, provided by the gang of 40 thieves.
Got lots of grub to share. Pull up an easy chair. Welcome to the 40 Thieves.
A couple of good songs also helped make Aladdin and the King of Thieves one of the few decent children's films around this summer. I do recommend it.
I enjoyed it, too. I thought that it had an interesting story that was a little bit more involved, a little more complex and challenging than I expected. I liked the animation, and once again, by bringing Robin Williams back, and he wasn't in the first Aladdin video sequel, I think they've gotten some of the magic that was in the first
Absolutely. It would have worked in theaters. I think I'm sure they do their calculus and say it'll make more money at home video.
No, they have said that they do not release sequels to their animated films as a company policy. So there you have it, at least not in theaters. When we come back, Los Angeles is an island prison in Escape from L.A.
Once an American loses his or her citizenship, they are deported to this island of the damned, and they never come back.
Going to L.A., bring back the black box, and you will receive a full pardon for every immoral act you have ever committed in the United States.
After a major earthquake, Los Angeles is a prison island isolated from the rest of America, which is run by a president for life, played by Cliff Robertson. His daughter has stolen a black box containing satellite codes that could turn off all power in the world, and she has fled to Los Angeles Island, and now the president wants an outlaw named Snake, played by Kurt Russell, to go in and capture her. That's the setup for John Carpenter's Escape from L.A., a sort of sequel to his popular 1981 movie Escape from New York. The movie is, of course, strong on action scenes, including a protracted chase involving the outlaw ruler of L.A., played by George Corafaci.
Nobody rolls into town and disrespects me. Not Snake Plissken, not nobody.
What's fun about the movie is its anarchic willingness to try absolutely anything. Look at this scene where an aging surfer, played by Peter Fonda, leads Russell in surfing down what used to be Wilshire Boulevard, while meanwhile, Steve Buscemi, as an agent and fixer named Map to the Stars, drives alongside.
Gotta be kidding me.
That's far out. A little later, Snake meets a transsexual he used to know in Cleveland. Played by Pam Grier with an artificially lowered voice, this character agrees to join his attack on the ruling mob and says there's only one way to get there in time. Parasailing, of course. Escape from L.A. is one of the bravest movies John Carpenter has ever made because he has spent a big pile of money on a special effects action picture and not been afraid to satirize himself and the genre in the process. It's a deliberately absurd movie, using a lot of older movie stars for their value as icons and working in a lot of jokes about Los Angeles and Hollywood. The movie is not respectable and not conventional, but it is original and daring, and it goes for broke. I have to applaud Carpenter for his anarchy, his energy, and his sense of humor.
And I can, Roger, and I knew that we were going to split this way because I knew that if you read off the plot line of this and told what the characters were, it would sound very funny. But I don't think the actual movie on the screen supports it. In other words,
so I didn't see the movie, I just read the plot description? Come on, Gene, I saw the movie.
No, okay, and I saw it too.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is the idea of Peter Fonda as the old, hippie coming back and surfing, that sounds great, and I was prepared to laugh.
When you saw them surfing, right down the street with a Cadillac next to them, and he jumps onto the back of the Cadillac from his surfboard.
Because the dialogue between them and the stuff with Steve Buscemi was so tired, and the anarchic...
Steve Buscemi's dialogue, it's wonderful in this movie. He's always trying to arrange a deal for him.
And the anarchic, the gang leader who's running the island is so boring. I like all... Pam Grier, of course, bring her back. That's fun. I get the joke. But I'm not laughing because the joke isn't that funny as played out.
Gene, you should have gone just a little bit further in opening your mind up to this film,
it was open.
You have to make a difference between just a genre picture and a movie like this that really is trying to break the boundaries.
I acknowledge every single attempt, and I think they failed right down the line. And there's a lot of noise that's very routine in the film. Coming up next, the story of a controversial young painter and of the American art world in the 1980s. Money and fame collide with art in Basquiat.
Painting. Ain't me ashamed to own anything. So, Samo. Samo. You got a real name?
Jean-Michel Basquiat.
That's Jeffrey Wright, absolutely brilliant in the role of Jean-Michel Basquiat, the young American painter whose brief life spanned the explosion of money and fame that colored the art world in the 1980s. Basquiat began as a graffiti writer, and here he gets a lesson from a friend on how to become a star.
First, you're going to have to dress right, you know. Then you're going to have to hang out with famous people, you know. Make friends with the right blonde people. Go to the right parties, yeah.
A key to Basquiat's success was his attracting the attention of Andy Warhol. Here he follows Warhol, played by David Bowie, and art dealer Bruno Bischofberger, Dennis Hopper, into a restaurant.
These are great, Bruno. Maybe I'll take two. I'll take, let me see these. I'll take this one, and I don't know. Bruno, can I borrow some money?
Yeah.
Here, you have change?
Made a good deal. You can have those too.
Oh, let me look at those, Bruno. Yeah, but they're mine now, Andy.
Basquiat is very wise about the art world, and it should be. It was directed by painter Julian Schnabel, whose own star shone brightly and briefly in the 1980s as well. And here he takes us into the gallery scene, as Basquiat does odd jobs at the powerful Mary Boone Gallery.
Yeah, I'm a painter too.
Really? Too bad. I kid.
Whoever you are, could you please move that stuff someplace else?
During the 1980s, Jean-Michel Basquiat was promoted and bought and sold and interviewed and profiled and talked about with a furiousness that would have burned out any artist. That he became addicted to heroin only assured that his life would be short. And he did die at age 27. But this movie is as powerful and as respectful a biography as Basquiat could have possibly hoped for. It's a terrific film, a remarkable first feature by Julian Schnabel, filled with more emotion, I think, than any of his own paintings. And the performance by Jeffrey Wright, so tender, so restrained, so charismatic, is a great piece of work, certainly worthy of Oscar consideration. Basquiat mourns a man and all artists who find themselves distracted from doing their life's work. It's one of the year's best movies. I know I'll see it again very soon.
Well, it's a very good movie, Gene, and one of the surprises in it is David Bowie's work as Andy Warhol, because, of course, we've seen Andy Warhol portrayed in a lot of movies, and here you get an entirely different side to Warhol as a kind of a gentle and supportive and very open person who stands by and watches as Basquiat puts a big area of white on one of his paintings and says, you know, maybe the white does work. So that whole knowledge about the art world, which obviously comes out of Schnabel's own background, is so good. And then the other thing I loved about this movie was it resists the temptation to explain. You know, usually in movies you have some kind of a little kind of abbreviated Freudian reason why everything happens. And in this movie, this guy is so much into himself because of his drug addiction, so focused inward that nobody can quite reach him part of the time. Well, and at the end of the movie, he's just on a level all by himself going out there on a death trip, and it's just wonderful the way that's portrayed.
The trip that he's on is the trip that the art world took. And I think that this film, again, I want to go back to emphasize how smart this film is about that time and a place when people were buying, selling art, and buying and selling artists, and artists were very distracted and were living lives that had nothing to do with their art.
Yeah,
and
but you know, he wouldn't have been quite as distracted if he hadn't been a drug addict. I often think that drugs are blamed for things, you know, like he didn't become an addict because of the art world. He screwed up because he was an addict.
Well, I'm telling you that the pressures that were put on the artists at that time were quite brutal.
A lot of people are under a lot of pressure and don't take drugs, though.
That's true.
He would have been under less pressure if he hadn't been taking drugs.
That is, of course, true.
Okay, when we come back, guys puzzle over the mystery of romance and the Pompatus of love.
Take it slow. Take it slow. I take it any slower, I'm moving backwards in time.
Love begins with its four main characters debating the meaning of Pompatus, which is a word in a Steve Miller song, and it doesn't really mean anything. And yet, if they could define it, maybe they could define love, which is a subject that baffles all of them. One of the guys, played by Tim Guinea, is a would-be screenwriter who meets Gina Davis's body double on the airplane to Los Angeles. She only wants to date him again if a producer liked his pitch for a TV series.
Did it go badly like you're being coy and humble, or did it go badly like you have no deal?
How should I know? They're idiots who manufacture the kind of stupidity that causes the average American teenager to see 17,422 deaths by the time he's 14 years old, mount a water tower with an Uzi and mow down a gaggle of nuns.
I think I might be busy.
That's Jennifer Tilly in a funny bit part. Meanwhile, John Cryer plays a therapist whose new girlfriend, Kristen Wilson, is skeptical of the value of a self-help book he's written.
Just answer me. If your book is so good, why doesn't anybody buy it?
The first printing was too big. And if Oprah wouldn't have bumped me...
The visual style of the movie often consists of quick cuts between lines of dialogue, which may be the way people speak, but gets a little tiresome on the screen.
She's too young. I mean, what do you have in common with this girl?
She's gorgeous.
What else?
What else? What else is there?
Does she know Ted Kennedy had older brothers? Does she know Paul McCartney had another band before
John, and who was the other one?
I mean, Christ, not only wasn't she asked,
John, and who was the other one?
Kennedy or Beatle? Big deal.
Kennedy or Beatle?
Embryo at Woodstock.
Bobby and Joe. The other Kennedy was Joe.
I have some affection for the Pompatus of love because I can see and enjoy what it's trying to do, which is to show these bright, literate, articulate guys who are completely baffled by women. But I think the director, Richard Shinkman, got in the way of his own inspiration. His style interrupts the characters and makes the stories more disconnected than they need to be. When he slows down and lets a scene play, it works, but too often the movie is hurrying on ahead in advance of its points.
That's clearly the problem with the picture. As soon as we get and we don't have that much time, ever. But as soon as we get slightly interested in somebody, it's a quick cut to another gag scene. And some of the writing, too, I think is in error. When they start joking about the Kennedys and, you know, who remembers which, and, you know, the stuff, the old joke about the Beatles, the group before
Wings.
Not
only is that an old joke, but these guys would know that it wasn't Joe Kennedy, it was John Kennedy.
Even said, and they even, early in the thing, the very first show, and this must have been written on like page 4 or 5 of the screenplay, where he says, they're trying to understand this word Pompatus of love in the song, and so one of them posits it might be impetus. Now, impetus does not sound like Pompatus because
of the words. First of all, the Pompatus of love sounds like the Pompatus of love.
So
it doesn't sound like
stuff,
anything that they're speculating about.
All of that
whole
stuff
scene could have gone.
All of
that stuff. In fact, I got an idea. Take out the title, Pompatus of Love, take out the Steve Miller song, take out the word Pompatus, and start from there.
And, well, that would help. And then write a character all the way through, and let's follow. Pick the ones you really like, write their story. Coming up next, our video pick of the week, a fine film starring Robert Downey Jr., who has sadly been in the news for his off-screen life.
In luxury service in Southern California style, adjacent to Beverly Hills on LA's fashionable west side, the Century Plaza Hotel and Tower, a Westin hotel.
In the last few weeks, actor Robert Downey Jr. has been in the news for his very serious problem with drugs, and it's a heartbreaking thing to read about because Downey's last movie, Restoration, out just now on home video, was such a treat due to his considerable talent. Restoration is the historical panorama of 17th century England as Downey plays our guide to the Age of Enlightenment. First, an idealistic young doctor who is all too willingly corrupted by becoming court physician to King Charles II, played by Sam Neill.
This shall be your lodging. The royal tailors will be continually at your disposal.
Restoration documents the rise and fall and survival of this doctor and the nation of England as well, and indeed, Downey's expressive face is seen in close-ups throughout the picture, registering the wide emotional range of his fortunes. In selecting Restoration out this week on home video as my video pick of the week, I'm hoping to restore a little respect to the way Robert Downey's life is currently being treated in the media as just so much talk show joke fodder. He deserves better. Restoration, my video pick of the week. Now let's recap the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down, way down for Jack. 2 thumbs up for Aladdin and the King of Thieves, with Robin Williams reprising his marvelous genie role. This film is only available on home video starting next week. It's not in theaters. A split vote on John Carpenter's Escape from L.A., a gloom and doom futuristic thriller with Kurt Russell. I was bored and repelled by much of this enterprise. Roger found it to be a non-stop lark. 2 thumbs up, way up, for Basquiat, the portrait of a painter who was a casualty of heroin addiction and the go-go days of the 80s art world. And finally, 2 thumbs down for The Pompatus of Love, the exasperating yuppie comedy that's the equivalent of listening to other people's troubles in a bar.
That's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including Tin Cup, starring Kevin Costner and Don Johnson, as rival golfers dueling for money, glory, and the love of Rene Russo.
From the moment I first saw you, I knew I was through with bar girls and strippers and motorcycle chicks and stunned, huh?
That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
We're challenging shoppers to compare their Tilex to X14 mildew stain remover.
Ooh, the X14 is working a lot faster than the Tilex. I didn't do anything. It's perfect.
Great tasting Xylofresh 100 sugar-free gum with xylitol. Clinically proven to have more cavity-fighting power than ordinary sugar-free gum. Xylofresh 100.
With a home equity loan from the Money Store, you can consolidate bills, make home improvements, even buy a car. Call the Money Store at 1-800-LOAN-YES.
Don't miss the first official James Bond Festival, October 23rd through 27th in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, with deluxe accommodations at the Renaissance Jamaica Grand. Call 1-800-MONTEGO.